Welcome to Adventures at Any Age, the YouTube channel that encourages everyone, but particularly senior citizens, to get out and enjoy outdoor adventure. My name is Jerry, and I'm the senior camper who decided in my mid-80s to modify my minivan and take off on a month-long van camping trip. That trip was so much fun, and such a joy to share with my friends on Facebook. I started this YouTube channel to provide information and tips that might encourage others to pursue their own outdoor adventure, whatever that may be, and wherever that might take them. Today I'm going to talk about the why and the how of converting my Chrysler Pacifica into a minivan camper. I'm going to cover the conversion process, the equipment I installed, and the equipment I took along to make my camping adventures more fun. I'm going to finish with a summary and recommendations for those who might be considering converting their minivans into a camper as well. So why choose a minivan for a camper? Well, in my case, it was an easy choice. We already own two of them, and the newer one, the Pacifica, has got less than 100,000 miles. But best of all, the seats fold into the floor. That is, the second and third row seats fold down flat on the floor and give you a fairly level floor to build a camper on. Then the question became, how do we convert it? And three options there. First option is you have somebody do it, and it probably would be beautiful, but it would be very expensive. Number two, you can order a kit. And kits are not terribly expensive, but they don't really optimize the space. They're kind of a one-size-fits-all, even though they're made for different models. And that kind of leaves you with do-it-yourself. So I decided to go to YouTube and find out who'd done that, and that was where I really scored, because the resources I found on YouTube made the job manageable. Now, once I had the concept, it was time to start the project, the conversion project. And I decided to do it in 4 phases. The first phase would start in California, where I was when the idea hatched, and where my sewing machine was. The sewing machine let me make the cushions right on the boat. So I went out and bought 2 large pieces of foam, one 3 inches thick that was firm, the other 2 inches thick that was soft. Once I had the foam, I measured it, cut it, which was a very precise operation because you couldn't be too far off on cutting the foam if you wanted to fit the covers over it afterwards. A knife. And so here we go. A 1 and a 2 and I start to cut. Da, 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 da. Okay, so that's what the cut looks like when they're done. And it doesn't look like it's beveled, doesn't slant at all, so both sides are even. So it should give me a pretty good cushion after I get it covered. Then I measured, cut, and sewed the material into the cushion covers and inserted the cushion foam. Actually, the whole project turned out better than I expected because I'd never built cushions before. Then I went ahead and bought rain shields covers for the windows so I could roll down the windows a little bit when I slept in the van at night. And I also built some window covers for the inside of the windows to give me some privacy and to insulate the windows in cooler weather. After that, I left for Wisconsin in the second phase. I started phase 2 of the conversion project right here in the garage in Wisconsin after we got back in early June. My first task was folding down all the seats and laying out tape to show the location for the intended bed and freezer refrigerator. Then I took out the third row seats. And after I did that, I attached a 2x4 to the location where they had been attached using the same bolts that had held them in. And this was the only point in the whole van that would have bolted on or screwed on attachment. After I got that accomplished, I started the next job, which was putting together the bed. And building the frame was not too difficult, although getting it to set level in the van did require some adjustment. The next phase, however, was difficult, and that was building the platform for the bed, because the bed was a convertible bed that would be a settee or a bed and required a lot of moving parts that had to fit together. So measurements were critical, and I ended up making a lot of adjustments and workarounds to the basic design to get it to work. But it did eventually work. Luckily, the cushions hid all the workarounds and misfits that I had created. After building the bed into my van, I realized the cushions were just too firm. I kind of knew it all along. So for a quick fix, I added a 2-inch memory foam topper, hoping it would do the job until I got back to California. To test it out, I planned a short trip, 3 days camping at the nearby St. Croix River. It was a perfect chance to see how it felt and to try out my new fridge freezer and the Jackery solar setup that powered it. So yeah, I just hit the road to see how it all worked out. The campground at St. Croix Falls was just what I needed. I found a quiet site right on the river, running high and fast after days of rain. That first night, the new bedding worked perfectly. I slept soundly, and the next morning took it easy. Hiked a few bluff trails, then stopped for coffee at an impressive coffee house nearby. When I checked the Jackery, it still showed over 70%, enough to keep the fridge cold, the fans running, and everything charged without worry. That night, a big thunderstorm rolled through. Rain, wind, the works. But the awnings held, and the tailgate screen kept things dry. By the third day, heading home, I felt good. There was still more to do, but now I knew exactly what that would be. My first task was to build an open front cabinet with shelves for my clothes, food, and other essentials. Space was tight, so I started by tracing the van's contours on cardboard. Then I used that pattern to cut the plywood. Once assembled, the lightweight structure turned out better than I expected, and it fit snugly. To make sure it stayed in place, I anchored it to the 2x4 I had already bolted to the floor. Next came the galley cabinet. I wanted it to hold my kitchen gear within reach from inside the van, and for my water supply and propane stove to be accessible through the van's sliding door. The top would serve as counter space for a small, battery-powered faucet and a pair of portable basins. Finally, I built a simple tabletop that would slide into a track on either side of the galley. It would work outside for cooking or washing dishes, inside as a table or desk. Completion of the table was the final step of the second phase. Now it was time to gear up and then hit the road. Gearing up took a bit of planning. Honestly, it meant cramming my stuff into every spot I could, but in a way that I'd still be able to find it later. Easier said than done in a minivan, but those new shelves in the galley cabinet made a huge difference. They gave everything a place to belong. Once I had all my gear organized, I hit the road, off on a week-long travel and camping trip back to California in my newly built camper rig. I stayed at different campsites along the way and stuck mostly to the blue highways, the slower, quieter roads. It gave me a chance to really test out the camper and explore places I'd never seen before. The Black Hills, eastern Wyoming, Nevada's Great Basin. Each one offered its own adventure, full of unusual sights you'd probably miss if you stayed on the main highways. Back on the boat in California, I went right to work on Phase 3. The first task was modifying the cushions. The topper had worked for sleeping, but took up too much room the rest of the time. So I bought a sheet of soft 3-inch foam and substituted it for the original firm cushioning. Before I put the reworked cushions back in the covers, I wrapped them in thin vinyl film to make the job easier and further protect the open cell foam from spilled liquids. Once I finished the cushions, the second task was installing 2 solar panels on the top of the van. I knew that was beyond my capabilities, so I hired a local welding shop to do the job. These guys were really good. It took them less than a week to complete the job, and they did very nice work. When I finally got the job done, I took that van out and I drove it, and I discovered a problem. At road speed, 65 to 70, there was a low roar, and I think it was caused by the air being forced to flow between the solar panels and the roof of the van. So I went online and bought an inexpensive deflector from Amazon, and that mounted directly to the panels, so that I didn't have to attach that to the roof either. Took care of 95% of the problem. Now, it did cost me about a mile, 2 miles per gallon in fuel mileage, but that was acceptable. So then when I get all that done, I took off on a trip up the West Coast, which I planned for all summer long. And I found out in that trip that not only did the cushions work well, those panels kept everything charged exactly the way I wanted them to. Well, that camping trip had really been a great success in many respects, except one. On one campsite, which was one of my favorites actually, it had been a long drive in on a very rough road, and I drugged the bottom of the van on the sand on the way in. Now, that was not a good thing. So I realized there was going to be a phase 4 to the van conversion project, and it was going to take place probably the next summer because I was out of time and out of budget at that point. Planning for that, I went out and found a lift kit for the Pacifica that would raise the van 3 more inches off the ground. So I decided to do that next summer, and I did. I took the van back to Wisconsin, had my mechanic install the kit. It only took a day to get it done. And while he was doing it, I had him also put in a trailer hitch. Because the more I thought about getting stuck in the backcountry, off the grid, the more I realized that I wasn't prepared for it. So I decided that because I was probably going to get pulled out by another camper, I better get my own equipment. I couldn't count on a professional tow truck to come back way in the boonies. So I did that. I found, in addition to the trailer hitch, I found a place that manufactured hooks that'll hook into slots in the bottom of the Pacifica. They're there and hooked into parts of the structural parts of the van that you can tow from. And those hooks are made by a company that makes them for auto transport companies. And that's how they hold down the front of the cars when they're transporting them across country by truck. So I bought a couple of those. Only cost about $35. But I now had attach points to the van that I could tow from without doing damage to the undercarriage of the van. I also bought a really good tow strap. I bought some plastic tracks that I could put under the wheels if I was in deep sand. And that kind of completed my package, my emergency package for getting stuck and for being able to get into places that I would have been questionable access before that. So with that, I had completed phase 4 and I had completed the van conversion process for my minivan. So right after the completion of the project was a really good time to review the whole thing and see if I'd done what I originally set out to do. And luckily, I had drafted a set of requirements before I started, and I could now use that as a list to determine whether or not I'd really accomplished my objectives. Other than a lift kit and the trailer hitch, the van could be returned to its original configuration in a single day. Off the grid for a week, no problem. And in most places, it could still pass as a regular van, perfect for a little stealth camping if need be. Even with the lift kit, it was still a great ride on a long trip, yet far more capable on gnarly back roads. Best yet, after considerable reworking, it was now a great sleeper. But even though the conversion had met all the requirements that I had set for it, did it actually accomplish the main purpose I decided at the beginning of the project? That was getting me back into the outdoor adventure of camping at the advanced age of 84. Well, after a year and a half from the first camping trip, which was to St. Croix Falls, and literally thousands of miles of camping travel, I can say without fear of contradiction that it absolutely did. My travel to new wilderness destinations, the expansion of my hiking, kayaking, and photographic adventures, and perhaps most importantly, my renewed connection with nature and the environment of wild places are now more possible and more affordable with this converted minivan camper. Now, not everyone my age will find solo minivan camping fits their lifestyle, capabilities, or their needs. But my message goes beyond that. Getting outside and connecting with nature can happen in many ways. Band camping is just one of them. The important thing is staying open to adventure at every age and finding a way to make that happen. You'll be happier, healthier, and glad you did. So let me finish up here with 2 quick points. First of all, I would have liked to included more information about the equipment I took on my camping trips, but I think that's better done on a shorter video later on. Secondly, I definitely want to thank the 2 YouTube creators who helped me so much with this project. There's Eric, whose channel is Eric Enjoys Earth, and he is really a guru in minivan camping. I followed his ideas very closely. And secondly, there's Kelly, the minivan camper gal, who had such great ideas about equipment and so much help in advising me how to modify a Pacifica minivan, which she had. You can find links to both their channels in the description below. So that brings us to the point where I want to thank all of you for following me along in this journey, and I look forward to seeing you on future videos. I really enjoy sharing this with you. So for now, the Senior Camper is signing off. Take care, everybody.